record this computer. Great. That's all right. Not everybody needs to know who I am and needs information about my allotment. So hopefully we're all good. Um, so yeah, a little bit more about Firth Rivers Trust. Just gonna reiterate, we were set up in 2009 with the mission to regenerate the fourth catchment through a holistic approach that recognizes the deep interconnections of the health of the land, people, and economy. And the picture you can see on the screen is of the fourth catchment. So that the catchment stretches well beyond Calendar to half of Five, most of the Lothians. And so we cover quite a big area. And the Leven catchment, which this project is all about, is one of those areas. So if the Leven catchment and what that actually covers isn't so familiar to you, you can see that the Leven catchment, this is a picture of it, goes beyond Loch Leven to all the tributaries and rivers that feeds into that. Um, and then goes down towards Glenrothes and ends up in the Leven. Um, yeah, so in the years that Forth Rivers Trust has existed as a charity, we grew from 3 people to now over 20 staff members. We have gained experience in a variety of different areas, everything from sort of stakeholder management and how do you bring different people together and facilitate those kinds of spaces to how do you engage with volunteers and manage a lot sort of larger amounts of volunteers to restoration projects of different kinds, everything from sort of tree planting projects to peatland restoration, natural flood management, and more. Then there's obviously some technicalities and administrative sides that come with running a project. So that's also something we've gained experience in. And then for the last 2 years or so, we've been working more and more in the sort of sustainable farming spaces and providing opportunities and advice for farmers and land managers who are interested in adopting more sustainable farming practices. And then lastly, all of this, of course, needs to come from somewhere. So funding and finance, both funding around sort of the more typical philanthropic public grants, but also looking at models that go beyond sort of these types of grants is something that we also have experience in. Um, and I'm not the only one working on this project. So Rachel already introduced herself at the beginning of this chat. And then other than that, there's also another person called James who's also working on this project. So we're 3 people. And of course, also have a whole swathe of staff whose expertise we can draw on as well. So that was a little bit about Firth Rivers Trust, the team behind this. And now I was kind of hoping just to go into the Leven Catchment Collective and a little bit about how this project was sort of, this initiative was sort of born. So, as I said, at Firth Rivers Trust, we work with quite a holistic approach to restoration that recognizes that, of course, it's really important to be working towards healthy ecosystems and the natural environment. But equally, it's also important to bring people along in that journey and provide the funding that's also needed. And so that's why a lot of our projects also sort of focus on how do we build the local capacity amongst different groups, community groups, farmers, to engage in stewardship of the land and also to have the capacity to do so if there's lots of other things that are going on in your life, or if you don't have strong connections locally or this sort of stuff, it might be more difficult to engage in the natural side of things. So it's really with this mindset that the Leven Catchment Collective was set up to help with building local capacity and supporting the ideas and the existing things that are happening. And so we've now been active in the Leven catchment for like many, many years, but particularly in the last 2 years, setting up this program called Lens, which Fiona will know a bit about as well, which is all about working with farmers. And so in these last 2 years, we've held workshops, done farm visits, meetings with community initiatives, surveys. And from that, the need and the idea for the Leven Catchment Collective arose. So now I've mentioned it loads of time without actually saying what it is. Um, so the Leven Catchment Collective is an initiative that Forth Rivers Trust is currently facilitating, which supports locally led action at the crossroads of healthy ecosystems, community well-being, and resilient businesses. And it does so specifically by supporting farmers and community groups with the knowledge exchange, capacity building, and project development that they're keen to explore, to take forwards, to support their ideas and actions. And so concretely, we're setting up a farmer cluster in the Leven catchment, as well as a community springboard. And so this webinar is a bit more focused on the community springboard, but we're happy to also answer any questions at the end about the farmer cluster side of things. Um, so the Community Springboard, what's that all about? So the Community Springboard is a program that supports community initiatives working with biodiversity, nature restoration, um, connecting people with nature, nature access, water quality and water management, and groups working around well-being, but well-being through nature activities. So we're very open to supporting community groups that don't only work with sort of strict like nature restoration or biodiversity, but also a bit more widely that maybe have a different remit, but incorporates some of the activities that I just mentioned. So I'm just trying to. So, how the Community Springboard will work is that we will have an initial sort of co-design workshop on the 12th of October. And I think maybe Rachel will be sharing a link to it. But anyways, there's also a slide that has a QR code, and we can share links about it later as well. That you're very welcome to sign up to. And what that workshop is all about is making sure that this Community Springboard really targets the needs, the visions, the challenges that community initiatives who are interested in participate have. So we're really interested for this to not just, um, to to really respond to the needs that there are rather than, not really be doing that. So we'll be having that workshop, and then a few weeks later, we'll kind of launch the springboard and the support that's available through that, really basing it off as well, the insights that we'll be gaining from that workshop. And then the support that's available will be lasting until approximately the end of March with a first kind of round. And then we'll take some time to reflect, get everybody's feedback, and then we'll have a second round that starts again, which all of that will kind of depends on the inputs we get and how it goes as well this time around. So, as I hope I've already emphasized, we're not wanting to be prescriptive about what the Community Springboard might offer, but just to give a sense of what that might look like so it doesn't feel completely intangible, I've sort of created, I guess, a bit of a menu or some ideas of, based on what I've also heard from speaking to people, of what kind of value it might provide. So, with the capacity building side of things, it could be like one-to-one office hour support with any challenges or support asks that community groups might have. It could be support with how to engage with a wider group of stakeholders, get people involved. Could be things like funding guidance. The skills and training could offer things such as accredited training courses. I put there the example of streamer certification, but it's really up to kind of what people are looking for. Facilitation and leadership development courses, peer-to-peer learning events. The project development side of things could be all things related to like seed funding to get new ideas off the ground, support with how to plan and design projects, access to ecologists and ecology surveys, and support with funding application. And then we're hoping as well that out of this line of work, there'll be loads of opportunity as well to connect and network with other groups and see how this kind of space, what that might lead us to, and what sorts of collaborations might emerge. The three concrete avenues through which this kind of support can be given is through events. So we have some budget for events that we can put together that might be targeting the skills building, the capacity building, and this sort of stuff, the peer-to-peer learning. We have some micro grants available, so we have a pot of money that we can put towards accredited trainings, towards project development support. And then we have the advice, support, and services that we can offer through Fourth Rivers Trust, the team that's on this project, as well as the staff that also works at the trust and hosts a wealth of different experiences. So just to kind of marry a bit the first slide that I have about the particular potential things that could be offered and the kind of avenues. So the events could be events like bringing different stakeholders together in the area, opportunities to connect with other groups. The micro grants could be things funding accredited training, project development funding. The advice, support, and services from Fourth Rivers Trust could be things like ecologist surveys, advice on how to develop project proposals and support with project proposal developments, how to engage with stakeholders, and this sort of stuff. And to give a bit of a flavor of some of the events that could be put up through the Leven Catchment Collective, we're organizing two events at the beginning of October that we're hoping to make publicly available by the end of this week or next week. So one will be a tree seed collection walk and talk, either in Kilmagad Wood or Fourmont Hills Wood. That will be kind of looking at that. That's, I guess, one of the types of events that we could be put together through the skills training side of things. So that's going to be an event with Ilana Bader, who is a very experienced tree grower, seed collector around how do you actually collect seeds and grow trees. And then another one that will be happening in the Memorial Hall in Markinch, around community-led funding for climate action and what kind of models exist out there that go beyond the typical short-term restrictive grants that can sometimes make it more difficult to do the long-term planning. That's just the same slide as before, so I'm just going to skip that. But ultimately, I just wanted to emphasize that this gives an idea of how the Community Springboard might look like, but we're very happy to co-develop it as much as people are willing to engage. And we really hope that the Leave Catchment Collective can become, in the long term, a connecting force that's held and steered locally as much as there's appetite for, and that helps plug the gaps, strengthen support, and catalyze positive land use across the catchment. So concretely, how can you get involved? As I said, we will be hosting this workshop in the Kinross Rugby Club on the 12th of October, which will be the first workshop that brings together community initiatives and will really be a chance to steer how the community springboard might look like and make sure that it actually tailors to the needs and visions of those participating. So this is a QR code and the link, and I think Rachel already shared the link to it in the chat. And then otherwise, we already have a sign up for the Community Springboard online. And I think a link will be posted shortly by Rachel of that as well as this QR code. So that's the link for if you are interested to join the Community Springboard. We would welcome you to sign up through that. It shouldn't take long, 5 minutes maximum. And then, of course, if there's any questions or if you have any access troubling the form, we're very happy for you to send us an email and to see if we can chat further at the email that I mentioned there, leavincollective@fourthriverstrust.org. And I think that's everything from me. I feel like I've spoken for quite a long time. So I will just stop sharing and then hear if there's any questions, anything that was unclear from what I said. Also, if there's any questions around the pharma cluster, we're also happy to share about that. It's the first time we're actually talking to other people about it than ourselves. So if there's anything that is unclear, please just feel free to let us know. Yeah, don't know if there's anything in the chat.
No, no questions in the chat.
Okay.
I'm just wondering how some of your activities tie in with some ongoing projects in Markinch, and perhaps Neil can come in on this one as well. Uh, Two issues that sort of come to the fore are the future of the Backburn project, both in terms of ecodiversity and restoration of fish spawning and so on, but also on the negative side, the rapid growth in invasive species, in particular the Himalayan balsam. These are two hot issues locally in Markinch that sit alongside some of the historical work that we do in things like the history of flax along the Leven Valley and so on and so forth. Just wondering if there are any points of tie-up there that you could help us with.
Yeah, so thanks so much for that question. So, um, so just to recap, the first thing was around the invasive species, and then the other thing was around the sort of ongoing work on the backburn that's also happening there. So we are, of course, sort of tying in with organizations that are and making sure that we're looped into what's going on in the area. So we have reached out, for example, to the likes of the Leven program and this sort of stuff, just to hear what's going on. But I think it's very important to emphasize that for our project, we are not ourselves uh, putting in any activities. So we're not going out and saying, we'd like the in stuff to be happening here. Who can do that? Or, you know, like uh, what we're really trying to do is if there is a community group, for example, who is interested in doing INS work in the area, we can help with the kind of knowledge that we have of how to do that, with potential trainings that's needed for it, or also to tie in to make sure that there's certain approaches that you can use for handling INS, for example, invasive non-native species, that helps it not recur and come every year. So we have some capacity, some experiences doing that in other catchments. And so we could bring that capacity in to support if that's something, for example, that you or another group locally was keen to get working on. So that's something we could support, but not that we ourselves would necessarily go out, for example, and do the INS treatment ourselves. So we're really about supporting the interests that are there locally, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
it
yeah,
makes good sense.
yeah,
When I saw the map of the fourth catchment area, I immediately thought in terms of specifics, and one of the specifics was, of course, I mentioned Himalayan balsam. That's one example among many. But the problem we have locally is that it's seen as a very local issue, and I'm quite sure
mm,
it's much wider than that. And if you look up the Esk Valley and all the tributaries to the south of the Forth, I would imagine similar problems exist. And linking up with some of these organisations might be a function of your organisation. And I'm saying this is one specific area. There are others.
yes, that's
That's
exactly, yeah, the way that we would, one of the ways that we would hope we would be able to help. And you're very true, the Himalayan balsam is very widespread across the whole fourth catchment, and we actually have a map that shows that where it is. That I'm also happy to send you in an email afterwards if you want to. And we hold a lot of relationships across the fourth catchment with local groups, but also ourselves that are kind of working to try and address some of these issues. Yeah,
thanks.
no worries. Any other questions in the room?
Hiya.
Hello.
Hello. I just joined because I wasn't exactly sure, but I can maybe just ask you the question because we are farmers and I'm involved in the Kinrossshire Agricultural Society.
Yeah.
So that is it's like the main farmer society of Kinrossshire, which is around about Loch Leven. So we've got about 400 members, and on Shoredwy we have about 2,500, 3,000 on a good year visitors. Would the Springboard be able to help us like communicate our farming stories of how we farm and what is sustainable and what we do on our farms to our visitors? Is that a viable project?
Yeah, so Rachel, feel free to jump in here as well if you have something. But one of the things that we are working, that's one of the main kind of purposes of the Leven Catchment Collective is working with the farmers and community initiatives. But also what we are also hoping to do is to create more overlaps between the two wherever there's the need or interest to do so. So I think that would definitely be something that we could support with in one way or another, either through I think the community springboard side of things would be all right. But I guess we just have to do some thinking, whether it's the farmer cluster, springboard, or we're also going to be hosting some events that are for everyone. So, or some kind of like parts of the work that's kind of, I guess, both for the community side and the farmer side of things. So I think that sounds really interesting and is definitely something that we would be interested to potentially support.
Yeah, that sounds. I don't have any answers or ideas, and I just jumped on just to ask the question.
Yeah, no, and even if you wanted like an initial call just to, share some of the initial ideas that you've maybe had or support with developing how that might look like, and have like some other people to kind of bounce ideas off, that's definitely also something we can do. So it's very, the support can be very flexible, whatever you think is most needed and whatever stage you feel like it fits the most.
Okay, then we could follow that up. Yes, I could talk to a few
Yeah.
people.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great.
Thanks.
And also, we were actually at the Kinross show 2 years ago,
Oh,
and
were
it was
you?
really great.
Oh,
Yeah,
brilliant. Well, it's just on the banks of Loch Leven on the south side. We're at RSPB Loch Leven.
yeah.
Yeah,
We
so
weren't able, yeah, we weren't able to make it this year just because nobody from our team was available. But the year before that, we were there. It was really
so
great.
imagine us. Yes. Okay,
Yeah,
thanks. Thank you.
yeah, no worries. Any other questions in the room or the online space that we're all in? If not, feel free to also just send us an email. Um, and we have had, if you don't already, you can follow us on our social media at Fourth Rivers Trust, where we've frequently been posting about this webinar, which I think maybe is how some of you guys got to know about it. But feel free to share more widely. We're hoping that this can be known to as many people as possible for whom it might be relevant, both the farmer cluster side of things and the community springboard side of things. So we're doing our best to spread the word, but the more people we have sharing about it and spreading the word together with us, the more likely we are to actually let people know that this is happening. So, um, great. And I think with that, I'm just gonna stop the recording.